I saw a car go off the road, hit me on the passenger side, like all the airbags went off. Did a 180, immediately felt safe.
We've been waiting for months. He's in North Carolina, we're in Kansas. Today's the day to go get his truck. So the frame guy did an awesome job. He got this front mount straightened up. Everything looked really good. But as good as he is, he could not get the buckle out of the floor of the cab. The cab corner was crushed, and we're going to have to end up replacing the cab. So a lot more work to come. Stay tuned. We're trying to do some test painting, some test cards. What that's going to allow us to do is to shoot the base coat over 4 different shade variances of epoxy or sealer, and then we'll match those up with the truck. We also have a section of the truck masked off with just the original blue. We're going to shoot that as well so we get a really close comparison. We're just going to paint a square right here. One of our test cards, we'll get them out in the sun tomorrow, hold them up, see which one matches the best, and if it's not close, we'll take it back and have them tint the paint a little bit more to match. We're gonna give that a shake for about 30 seconds or so. Let that shake really good and then shoot a little bit of base coat. You can see that first coat, it looks completely covered over here on the black, but as you go down, it changes colors. So we'll just let this sit there and dry. Do a second coat, a third coat, maybe even a fourth. And as you can see on here, it looks like it's covered because we went over the original base. So however many coats I take to cover here is how many I will end up putting on the bedside. And with these panels marked off the way they are, we'll be able to peel this back up and compare it to the original paint that's right there beside it. All right, so we got our 3 coats of base on. Like in this angle, it just looks black. As you get up on it, it's a beautiful pearl. So even here, you gotta get the right light and it really picks up all the pearl. So we got 3 full coats of base on. We'll shoot a little bit of clear, let that dry out on tomorrow, pull it out in the sun and see how close our color match is. I'd say the color match is dead on perfect. And we obviously have 4 different shades, and you can kind of see the shades now. I don't know if the camera is going to pick them up, but there's 4 different shades. And the darker the base, the better off we are. So I think this time on the first try, we got our paint matched perfectly. So we'll get the cab sanded down now and start prepping everything for paint on the cab. Today's the day we're going to paint Joe's truck, but you can paint just inside of a shop. The difference between a professional paint booth and painting in your home shop is you're gonna have a little more dust, which means you're gonna have a little more color sanding or wet sanding when you get finished with your paint job. I wanted to show you the truck. We've got it up on jack stands. This is kind of how these cabs come from Ford. They come with fenders, hoods, all the sheet metal is included when you buy cabs. So I've already sanded the truck with 600 grit and I'd use a Scotch-Brite for all the jams, so everything's been nice and sanded. We wiped it down the first time. We use Sprayway glass cleaner for the wipe. It works really well. It's an ammonia base, so it doesn't leave any residue. The Ford cabs come with these little tabs. When you close the door, it has a stop. So when this door closes, it hits that stop and doesn't allow the door to close all the way closed. So it goes until it clicks. And that way the door is closed, so none of the edges are actually touching when you get through with your paint jobs. That's how Ford paints them. That's how we're gonna paint them. The only difference is they use a robot, we're gonna use the human. This is gonna be like a 3-part process. So first, we're gonna lay down a sealer over the entire truck. That seals the surfaces that are there. That'll help fill in any sand scratches that you have from the sanding of the E-coat. And then we're gonna put down our base coat. This is an HX paint code. It's an antimatter blue. It does have a lot of pearl in it, but it's not a tri-stage. So there's not a mid coat in there that you would think, like the AZ Star White that we had on the other 2 Lightnings that we built. So then the 3rd coat will be our clear coat. On this truck, I'm gonna put at least 4 coats of clear so that I can get a really thick layer in case we have to do any sanding. We don't want the opportunity to sand through that clear coat when we're doing our color sand and final buff. So let's jump in and we're gonna get this truck tack rack down. Going to do a little bit of a tutorial on how to do a color sand and buff job on a freshly painted truck. You can see that there's orange peel, there's little dirt nibs, and what we're going to do is sand until those are gone. So the first thing you want to do is clean this panel really well. You don't want to have any dirt or debris on this panel before you start. So just take a little Sprayway glass cleaner and a clean microfiber towel and wipe down the panel until it's clean, until you don't have any dirt on the panel at all. Before you start, it's always good to tape off the adjacent panels with masking tape, so as you're sanding, you don't roll up onto the top of the next panel and have to rebuff and sand that panel. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start individually sanding out each one of these little dirt nibs out of the door. So you're going to end up with all these little sand spots when you get finished. Taking out those dirt nibs will keep that speck of dirt from coming loose while you're wet sanding, and keeping it from rolling around under your paper and scratching swirl marks in your paper. So in order to do that, we use this little orbital buffer sander and these little 1500 grit sandpapers, and it's just Velcro. So you just put those straight on that straight on that paper, and then you take your sander and you go around and you just barely nib. I don't know if you guys can see this one right here, but you take this little sander and you just go until that's flat. And what that does is that takes that dirt nib off, and it keeps you from having it come loose in the top, and it flattens that panel, so when you sand over it, you won't see where that dirt nib was. If you just sanded over it with something that was soft, you'd have this imperfection and you'd see it. Now we'll just go over, start with our 1500 grit sandpaper, and we will wet sand this panel. We're going to keep in a direction that is with the grain, one direction, keeping our panel fairly wet. We're going to clean this panel first before we do. Again, we're going to wipe it all down to make sure all these dirt nibs that just came loose are not in the paint when we're behind the sandpaper. If you get dirt behind your sandpaper, you're going to end up with scratches that are really hard to buff out. And depending on if they're not too deep, they can be buffed out, so I wouldn't worry too much about it, but it's best to try to get that paper keep it as clean as possible. If you're feeling along and you hear this, sounds like a zipper, this zzz, zzz, zzz sound, you want to stop, clean the paper, because that is basically a little tiny piece of sand, and it's sitting there scratching your panel. So we're going to go either this way or this way. We're not going to go in circles. When you go in circles and then you buff in circles, it doesn't cross cut those. The key to sanding out sand scratches is you have your scratches going this direction, and then you're buffing this way. So it creates more cross friction, and it buffs those sand scratches out a lot easier. So we're using the 3M wet or dry 1500 grit on just a 3M sponge pad. This is where it can vary depending on what you want your finish to come out like. This wet or dry pad will leave a little bit of that factory orange peel on the panel. It won't block it completely flat. In this case, that's what I want, because I don't want it to look like it's a complete show car, but I do want to knock down all of the high spots from the orange peel that we have. So it'll be really flat, but it won't be perfectly flat, and that's kind of the goal with this one. So when you're using these pads, you just wrap the paper around the pad. It gives you something to grip onto, and just get you a pump sprayer of any kind. I do like to use a little bit of Dawn dish soap in my water. I'm just lubricating this down with water. So we're just going to kind of wet this panel down, and we'll wet this as we go, as needed. And like I said, you're just going to go with long sweeping. And when you first feel sanding, you're going to feel like that. I felt some resistance, and that's normal. You want to feel that resistance when you're starting. That means the sandpaper's working on that grain. As it starts to get easy to sand, that kind of tells you that you've sanded through the high spots and you're down to just black clear. The trick to buffing is when you're spinning your buffer, you always want to run it off the edge. So imagine this is the edge of the panel. You run it this way, off. If you go down, the buffer is going to dig and you'll end up burning through that panel. So like on the edge of the door here, I will run the buffer this direction as I'm going. I don't want to run it where it's coming around on the backside and digging, because you'll end up sanding this edge clear off. That's kind of the key to sanding the panel and not buffing through the clear. That and just taking your time and letting the buffer do the work. So we're going to start with the Aggressive. This is their Super Duty rubbing compound, 05954. It's pretty inexpensive for what it does. Some of these can go for $30 to $80 a bottle. The next one I'll show you here in a minute is the Finesse It by 3M, and it's pretty expensive, but it's kind of a miracle worker. A lot of guys will start with the Finesse It and they'll go on a foam pad and they'll just start with that. This will cut 1000 grit sand scratches. It doesn't have any silicone in it, so it's silicone free. You don't have to worry about silicone scratching it. But this is what my go-to when I'm doing my first buff. So just take your buffer and put a little bit on your buffing pad. It doesn't have to be great. You'll learn how much to put on there. I usually put quite a bit on the first time. And a lot of guys, first thing they want to do is put it on the panel and just start going. Well, that's going to sling this compound everywhere. So you want to put it up on your panel and just run it back and forth a little bit first. Kind of spread it around before you take off buffing. So it gets interesting when you're in an area like this. So you're either going to be running here on it and here off of it or not. So what I like to do is kind of keep work this in thirds. So this 2/3 I'm gonna puff first, then I'm gonna buff this 2/3. But we're going to switch over to this this black. It's really soft. We're going to use a 3M finesse it. This is going to allow this to kind of help polish out these areas. But before we do that, we want to clean again. So we clean all the time. We can take a look at this. You can see it looks, probably from the video, it looks like it's finished, like it's almost done. But if you look up close, there's still some haziness to that panel. Even when I wipe this down, you'll still see some scratches, some fine scratches, and that's what our next step is going to help take out. I use an 8.0 high output battery. That battery will usually last me 3 to 4 panels depending on how big they are. I'll be able to do both of these doors with one battery. I keep like 6 or 8 of them on the shelf, so I know I don't run out of juice. I mean, it is an electric pickup, so it'd be bad if I didn't use an electric polisher, right? This one is a Finesse It. It's a 3M 05928 Finesse It 2 machine polish. This is some of the best polish there is. It removes the swirl marks. It's easy to clean up. The finish will be super fine after running this. Step 3 is to use our orbital, and again we're going to use a black pad. It's very soft. I like the ones with the grooves so that it holds the powder and lets it clean a little better. This one I switch over to a Meguiar's. You can just get this online or at O'Reilly's or wherever. Just Ultimate Polish. It's a gloss enhancer. This will eliminate those very fine swirls and give you that really deep look. When you're finished a little bit, that's probably too much, but that will go this whole panel. This is a Milwaukee Orbital, so as you see when I'm gonna bump it, when you see it, it actually just orbits. This is the 5-inch version. There's different versions for different throws. This one I like to do polishing. I'll use it on adjacent panels on cars that I've painted. It'll help bring the polish back out of the other panel. Take this, just kind of line it on the panel, and it's gonna be noisy, but I'm just gonna run it over this whole panel. It'll leave a bit of a foggy appearance, so that panel will be kind of dull, kind of foggy. As soon as you take your quick backs and kind of run over it with a rag, that's gonna come out like a mirror. I've used hundreds of different types of wax and quick detailer and all that over the years, trying to get to something that I really liked and just was a no nonsense. Get yourself, it's made by Technician's Choice, ceramic detail spray. It's yellow, TEC 582. This stuff is kind of thick and it has a really sweet smell to it. I love putting it on for the smell. All you have to do with this stuff is it's really a wipe on, wipe off. And I'm not gonna clean that panel before I do it because that's actually a polish that's on there. I don't need to take it off. So we're just gonna spritz some of this on here. So all you have to do is just spritz it down a little bit. That's it, that's all it takes. I probably put way too much on, but that's all right. And we're going to take this rag, this microfiber rag on the back side and just start polishing, and you'll see this start to gloss out. And that is it. So now let's give this a shot. You'll see that this kind of come out like a mirror. It's not perfectly flat. I don't know if you can see, if that camera is even picking it up, but it's not perfectly flat, but it's so close. It's like a mirror. Maybe it'll pick it up on this back panel. Let me wipe this back panel off just a little bit. There's some orange peel in the back door that we haven't done, and we roll up on the front. You can see the difference. That's how you color sand and buff a paint job. Thanks for sticking with me through that. I know it's quite a process and it takes a while, it takes a lot of experience and a lot of practice. Don't jump out there on a brand new car to begin with. You're gonna fight it. You're gonna sand through the paint. You're gonna burn edges. Practice on an old panel. If you got an old hood laying around or an old car that you don't care about the paint on, practice on that first. In order to get to the cab, you're going to have to take the AC lines loose. You're going to have to empty the heater core. Yes, it does have antifreeze that runs through the cab just like a normal F-150. So we got to take all this front part. We're going to take all these clips loose. Take all this inner. We're going to take the frunk out and then start diving in. So one thing that we're going to have to do before we can go into taking the cab loose is we got to deactivate the high energy, high voltage 400 volt system. And we need to put this truck into a permanent tow neutral so that it doesn't go into park lock, because we need to be able to roll the chassis around. Just like on the last build, you got to be able to roll that chassis around when we get this cab in the air, because we're going to put the new cab back on, and I don't want to have to pick it up with floor jacks. So press and hold to initialize. It says initializing. Place vehicle in neutral. It's in neutral. And then we have a sign up here that says neutral tow, remove park brake for towing. Neutral tow engaged. Park brake is now off. Neutral tow engaged, turn ignition off for towing. Now it will stay in neutral. The next thing I need to worry about is before we disconnect this 12 volt battery is what position do we want the windows in order to be able to remove the door glass. The last one I did, I really fought because I didn't have power on the truck and I didn't know. So these side windows on this truck, they need to be in a particular position in order to be able to layer them up and down. And I'm going to think about this for a minute and find out the best position. I might just Google it, how to take a door glass out, see what the first step is, and then we'll go from there. To take this charge door out, you reach down through this same gap as you do on the other side, and there's going to be a couple of little releases. There's a brace right here, and those little push clips you can kind of see just above my finger. There's the edge of one and the ones on back. So that brace kind of where the fender charger bolts to, it makes it just a little bit difficult to get to, but you should be able to get down in there and get it worked loose. So because there's two releases here, one at the back, and possibly one up here at the front too. Now the front is actually where the hinge is. This part is the part we're trying to remove from the truck, and this is the actual CCS port, and it stays. That's a charge door. And I ended up just nicking the non-mooring pry tool up in here and prying it out, because you can see what I could reach this one from the top, but I couldn't reach this one. These just depress. The bottom two you can get to, so you should be able to pry the bottom two, pick up and pivot down and roll out of there. There's one wire. This wire actually works. This wire actually is the switch for your pin to know that your door's closed, and it's your release. That's how you take a charge door out of an F-150 Lightning. Okay, now to remove the charge port, there's going to be 4 8mm bolts. And then there's 2 tabs on the top you pry out on, and that will slide that charge port downward. Now I don't want to go any further with it from right there. Reason being is I still have a 10mm bolt here on the inside that I need to take loose first. for this wire. It's in this fender, just a push clip right up. That way that can roll all the way down. All right, cab's off. There really wasn't a whole lot. Well, a little bit of stuff you saw underneath the front. We had some wires, 2 AC lines, 2 coolant lines, a plug here, which corresponds to this one and this one. You had to take the charge port loose, which was a bit of a booger getting the door loose. Several connections, wiring connections here. 4 brake lines and a water bottle and a steering. And that is it besides a ground wire. It's just not very much to get one of these in the air. That makes the Lightning super simple to work on. So if you had to get in here to change out a module, you had to change, this is your compressor for your cooling, max tow cooling. This compressor is for the cabin cooling. This one is an option. You don't get that on a non-max tow truck. See, we've had some friends in here. We'll have to clean this up before we put it back down. So that buckle runs all the way up to right here. And it's not that it can't be fixed, because my frame guy pulled it about as far as he could. It's just not going to be perfect. And on a rebuilt title that's got 100,000 miles or something that's not got a lot of time in it, I wouldn't be afraid of continuing to pull on that and get that cab straight, but certainly not on this truck. So